Okay, so in this video, we're going to give the AI characters, the enemy characters, some AI, very rudimentary AI, but it'll be slightly longer this video because we'll get into a little bit of coding to do this. Visual coding, of course. So the stuff you're used to, it's not going to be too difficult, but that's why the last video was a little bit shorter because I didn't want to make this any longer than it needed to be. So we have our enemies placed in the center of the platforms, and in a lot of platform games, the enemies will go backwards and forwards, so they will patrol. So we're just going to have, for now, our green enemies here patrolling backwards and forwards on the platforms, so guarding the platforms. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is give the enemy the same behavior that the player square has got, the platforming behavior, and then we're going to use the simulate control to make them move backwards and forwards. So let's click on the enemy in the palette because that highlights all of them then, and let's go over to our behaviors on the left hand side and click on add new behavior and give them the platforming behavior. Okay. Now, to get them moving, we need it to recognize which direction they're going in and then apply the correct control. Okay, so to do this, we're going to give the enemies an instance variable. Now, you use these, some of you use these before in your shoot 'em ups. An instance variable is something unlike a global variable that's applied to every single instance of that object. So in this case, every enemy that exists will have its own instance variable because they may be traveling in different directions. So to give an instance variable, we highlight our enemy again on the right hand side here, come over to the left and go to instance variables. And let's add a new instance. Now, we could give an instance of a string variable where basically we say left and right, but actually this is easier if we use a variable called a Boolean, and that's this one. So we'll call this variable, let's call it action. So that's basically what the enemy's doing. And a Boolean variable, a Boolean only has two values, true, false, 0, 1, you know, it just has those two, and in this case, left and right. However, the way that it works in Construct is going to be true or false, or is or isn't, as it likes to say. So we just need to remember to assign one of those to each. So I'm going to put in the description here, and this is not game code, this is for designers to help them remember. I'm going to put that false is left and true is right. So a Boolean in this case is either going to be true or false. Let's make that look the same. There we go. Okay, so false is left and true is right. Okay, so when we come to code it, we'll remember that. In other words, when this action is true, it means that the enemy is going to be walking right, and when this action is false, they're going to be walking left. Okay, so click OK, and there's our instance variable, and that instance variable is up there, and at the moment they're all set to false. Yeah, so if you look over, there's a little tick box. I can tick it. That's now true. So I could, if we let's set that first one to false, let's set that one to true, let's set that one to false, and let's set that one to true. Sorry, that one I've selected. They're all selected at the moment, right? Okay, let's have that one on false, that one's on true, that one's on false, that one's on true, and that way they'll be going different directions, and that'll create an extra little challenge. That one can be on false, but it doesn't really matter at this point whether they're on true or false. Okay, now we need to get them moving, so we need to simulate the control. So let's go to the event sheet and let's click add an event. And basically what we want to do here is we want to get it to simulate or recognize the instance variable. So the event is basically, what does the instance variable say? Does it say that it's true or false? So the instance variable is on the enemy. So we'll click on that and click next. And then we'll scroll down to instance variables and we'll look at this one, is Boolean instance variable set? And click next. Which instance variable are we referring to? Action. Now, when it comes on, it defaults to this. So this is true, is action. It basically means yes, the Boolean is set to true, it's set to is. So this one is going to be automatically be, or we want this one to be right, because we've said when it's true, they're going to be walking right. And we could have done it the other way around, but so long as we're consistent, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to set the left first and show you how to do this. So to set the left, we want this not to be true. So the way you do this is, all of that's correct up to now. You right click on it and go to invert. And you see now it says enemy 1 is action, but there's a big cross there. That means it isn't now. So this is about as complex as, well, the coding gets for now anyway, until we get to in a little bit when we're going to start jumping on the characters' heads. But for now, that's a little new thing you've not seen before. So we've basically inverted this particular command. So if enemy action is false, we want them to go left. So just as we did with the play square, click on add action, click enemy 1, click next, and let's go down to the platforming abilities, simulate control, and we click left. Okay, so when the action is false, and remember for a bunch of them it is already, they'll walk left. So when we start the game now, they should walk left. Let's just do the other one. So for walking right, so add event, enemy, next. Is Boolean instance variable set? So it's under instance variables. Click next, action, and is action. We can leave that one as it is because we want that one to be true. And now we go to add action, enemy, next. What am I looking for? Platform, sorry. Simulate control, next, and we want them to go right. So now we should have them going left and right. So let's check that out. There you go. So they move very quickly at the moment. So let's change their speed down to 100. And this is in the instructions as well. Okay, and let's try that again. They're still going to jump off the platforms, but they'll go a bit slower now. Right, now, I made the classic mistake there of, because I've got multiple ones on, but I've only actually got one selected, I changed the speed for just that one. If we want to change the speed for all of them, you should click on enemy 1. You can see it says multiple, so let's just put 100 in there. And that will change it for every single one of those instances, because they're all the same thing, but individual instances can have different values. So you can start to create variations on the same enemy just by changing the speed and stuff. Okay, so let's try that, and they should all go a bit slower now. And there you go. Now, of course, we don't want them to fall off. We want them to change direction when they get to the end of the platform. And the way we generally do this is with a collision. So we're going to put an invisible block in place that is going to change the direction of, or toggle the Boolean, which will change the direction of the walking. Okay. So let's put that in. So the first thing that we need is a new block or a new object. Make sure that you're on the action layer, double click to add a new sprite, And let's call this, and it's a bit of a mouthful this, but reverse warp direction. I'm a great fan of calling things exactly what they do. So and hitting one of these blocks will reverse the walk direction, whatever way they're walking. So let's call this reverse walk direction and insert. Give this another colour again. Won't run out of colours anytime soon, but I'm going to give this an orangey colour. But it's going to be invisible to the player, this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It just helps differentiate it for you. And I want to make it quite a bit smaller, not too small, but let's call it 20 by 20 pixels. So it's a bit smaller. Now, we need to position these just on the edges. Now, it's really important you put these on the action layer. So if you've, we did check that, but just double check again, because when you put them on a different layer, it really does mess up. And I'm just going to put one of these on each side. And this is why we've used the Boolean, because otherwise it becomes... There are other methods for doing this, other ways of doing it, as always with everything, but it's a bit easier by using that Boolean. So let's put that on there. Couple more to do. And obviously we don't necessarily need one on every one, but let's build it up. Okay, so there you go. Whoops. And they don't need to be solid or anything, because as soon as the enemy, we want the player to be able to go through them, and when the enemy walks into them, they're going to reverse. Now, what we'll do is, if you just highlight that in the project, just make sure that's selected, we'll make them invisible now. So come over to the left hand side, and where you'll see properties at the bottom here, let's just untick initial visibility. So now when you press the play button, you won't be able to see those. Okay. And that's all that needs to go there. I don't think they need anything else. We just need to change the collision codes on the specific event sheet. So let's click event sheet. Let's go over to new event. So when the enemy, scroll down and find collides with another object. Click next. And which object is he colliding with? Reverse walk direction. So when the enemy collides with reverse walk direction, so that's what that means there. Click action. We want the enemy. Next. Instant variable. So go to your instant variable, and you want the one that's toggle Boolean. So if it's already set to false, it'll turn it to true, and if you're already on true, it'll turn it to false. Okay. And which Boolean are we toggling? The action one. And there we go. So that should work now. So if we press play, and there you go. You have now got patrolling enemies. And just to spice things up, let's just go back to our layout and let's change. So let's make that one 50. Let's make that one 150. So we've got the first three enemies now have different speeds. Let's just see how that looks. Yeah. Okay, and we can move through this. Enemies aren't going to do anything at the moment, but we have platforming enemies. Okay, so the next video, that'll be the end of this video. The next video that we're going to do is we're going to add a collision code, so that if we collide with an enemy, it'll restart the layout, and if we jump on the enemy, it will kill the enemy and destroy them, which is a key factor in platform games, isn't it? Okay, so join me for the next video when we get to that.